So you've selected a lender, and hopefully you've been paying attention in these classes and you've made the right choice. But just in case, I want you to understand that you're never truly committed to a lender until the day of your closing after you sign on the dotted line. So if for whatever reason you decide to switch lenders in the middle of the process, this is totally okay and it is your prerogative as the buyer. However, you want to be very conscious of your timeline because as the buyer, it is your obligation to make sure that you close on time. So, if you're going to switch lenders, make sure you do it very early in the process and make sure that you confirm with a new lender that they can still hit the obligated closing date. If not, sometimes it's best to stick with the current lender that you've already selected or go speak with your realtor and see if they can negotiate an extension on the close date to make sure that you're working with the lender of your choice. So, again, just remember, you're not committed to this lender until the day of closing, until after you sign on the dotted line. Now, let's jump into the loan approval process, and I'm going to break that down for you. But just in case you want more detail, we've provided a very thorough guide for you that will help you understand each milestone of the loan approval process and what to expect when you're working with a lender. Let's cover the loan approval process, and that way you know what to expect as you work with your lender towards closing day and receiving the keys to your new home. It starts with step number one, going under contract, selecting the lender, and then deciding whether or not you want to float or lock your interest rate. Since we've been in a rising interest rate environment over the last couple years, we advise to most of our students to go ahead and lock their interest rate as quickly as they can. This will provide any unnecessary stress about worrying about the interest rate getting higher on you throughout the process. However, if you decide to go ahead and float the lock, you can keep the lock open all the way up until roughly a week prior to closing. The next step, which we've already covered in detail, but we're going to go ahead and order our appraisal through our lender. Next comes loan processing. Loan processing is a very important milestone throughout the mortgage process. The loan processor is responsible to package up your loan and make it a very presentable package to the underwriting team. Loan processing is when they do the order outs, so they're going to go ahead and verify your income, your assets, your liabilities, etc. Once they have everything on your file, they're going to go ahead and package up the loan and send it over to the underwriting team. Prior to loan approval, it's important that the underwriting team has a full package to review and approve. So you'll work with the loan processor to get your homeowner's insurance in place. We talked about homeowner's insurance quite a bit in our last class. So once you have a full package, the loan processor will submit that, including your homeowner's insurance, to the underwriting team. The underwriting milestone is probably the most important milestone when it comes to mortgage lending. That's because underwriters are the only party with the ability to approve or deny a loan. But you're a successful homebuyer, which means an approval is coming down the pipeline. Now, congratulations, you are conditionally approved. The underwriter releases a final checklist of items that we have to meet before we get our clear to close. Typically, these will be simple items, such as an updated pay stub or an updated bank statement. Once we meet the final checklist, the loan processor will take the full package again and resubmit it to the underwriting team for our final approval. Once we have our final approval, the loan will move to clear to close status. This is the most celebrated milestone in the mortgage lending process. It means it's time to get ready for closing. Before we start prepping for closing, let's go through a list of the do's and don'ts as you go through the mortgage process. Before we jump into do's and don'ts, we've provided a very thorough guide to the mortgage lending process. Make sure you download this and use this as a reference point as you go through this process yourself. Sometimes in mortgage lending, things go wrong. So it's important to understand that if this happens, you might be ping-ponged in between these different departments and these different milestones. But you're a successful homebuyer. So hopefully you've selected the right lender, you've been extremely prepared, and you're ready for a smooth process. If something does go wrong and you need a little additional assistance, don't feel afraid to reach out to us directly. Now, let's jump into the do's and don'ts once you go under contract to ensure that you have a smooth process with your mortgage lender. Let's go through them one by one. The do's. Make sure we're asking frequent questions. If you're uncertain about something or you're unsure of something, just ask your mortgage lender or ask your realtor. Taking good guidance is key to making sure that we have a very smooth process. Next, keep all of your originals. Let's make sure we're always organized. So when it comes to your tax documents, such as W-2s, your 1040s, or important statements like your bank statements or your pay stubs, make sure you're highly organized and you have the original statements ready for use. Next, let's make sure we always notify our lender if we're receiving gift funds. Notify them up front. They will provide a plan to make this as easy as possible for you and your donor. Next, we want to always notify our lender if we have major employment changes, such as a pay decrease or a pay increase, or something more significant, even like us losing our job or being transferred to a different department. If something like this happens, don't try to hide it because the underwriters will find out. So let's just make sure that we're upfront and honest with our lender. And this really comes down to almost anything throughout the transaction. Just be honest, be transparent with your lender. It goes a long way, and good lenders are going to be able to come up with solutions for you instead of you being insecure and worrying about something throughout the mortgage process, which is sometimes stressful enough as is. Next, if God forbid your marital status changes throughout the process, and you've gone from either separated to divorced or from single to married, make sure you update your lender because they do have to make significant changes to your loan depending on what type of state you live in. Don't have large withdrawals or deposits in your bank accounts throughout the process. Anything over 1% of the purchase price is considered a large deposit or withdrawal. You want your activity in your bank accounts to be regular and normal, meaning your regular paycheck or your regular deposits or withdrawals. If there's irregular activity, most of the time you're going to have to explain this to the lender and you are not going to be able to use these funds as part of your down payment or your closing costs. Next, no cash advances on your credit cards. Again, it's not a permissible form of coming up with funds for your down payment or your closing costs. When it comes to your credit profile, overall, you don't want to make any changes whatsoever as you go through the mortgage lending process. So this means don't take on any new debts, don't increase your current credit limits, don't close any of your established credit cards, and don't open up any new credit cards. Next, avoid large purchases altogether. So don't buy a new car. If you want to go furniture shopping and put it all on your credit card, wait until post-closing. If something comes up and you've impacted your debt to income ratio in the middle of the process, you risk losing the loan altogether. Next, don't change jobs in the middle of the process. If your employment status changes similar to the dues, make sure you immediately notify your lender. They will help you walk you through this. But if you can, avoid changing anything with your employment altogether. I'll tell you this, we've had students in the past reach out to us letting us know that they've made a mistake. Most mistakes in the mortgage lending process can be overcome, but you're a successful home buyer. So heed the advice that we're giving you, and you're going to have a very smooth process, which is going to allow you to get your clear to close early and always on time. So next, we're going to start talking about how we prepare for a successful closing day.